The light in the hospital corridor was too bright, sterile on my face. My mother sat on a cracked faux leather seat, arms crossed, mascara shadowed under her eyes. My Uncle Raoul loomed by the window, staring out at the parking lot below, as if there were answers in the faded asphalt. My younger brother Caleb slouched with his phone glowing on his lap, pretending indifference. I stood in the middle, the taste of old coffee coating my tongue. The pulse in my ears louder than the intermittent hum of the vending machines. "I'm not going back to school," I said. My voice sounded brittle, barely mine. "This is what I want to do." My mother's head snapped up. "And what is that exactly?" Her accent grew stronger when she was upset, her vowels rolling sharp. "More of this music nonsense?" "It isn't nonsense," I said. "I'm good at it. Professor Cameron said." "Professor Cameron doesn't pay the rent." My uncle broke in, his voice a thunderclap in the fluorescent hush. "And you want to talk about being good? There are thousands, millions, who think they're special." Caleb didn't look up. He just scrolled, sprawling further and further away from me. "You could be a nurse, a radiology tech, even a teacher." My mother wiped at her eyes. "I broke my back for you. And after your father—" She stopped, silent, a thin thread of grief running around her words. I couldn't find a way to explain it. Not right then. I only knew that the morning my father died, the morning the doctors didn't look us in the eye when they brought the news about all the heartbeats stopping, it was music that let me believe in air again. It was the vibrating wood under my fingers alone in my room that let me imagine possibility, some shape to grief. But they didn't understand. Or maybe they did and it only hurt them more. This idea that their oldest child wanted to try and cling to something so frail. "When do you think success will come?" Raoul pressed, voice low, almost whispering. "Will you be 30, 40, still making nothing, chasing some ghost?" Outside the window, a siren cut through the dusk. I pressed the heel of my hand to my eye and remembered my cello in its battered case beside my bed, the worn bow, the hopeful little scrap with sheet music tucked inside. "I don't know," I said quietly, "but I have to try." Silence fell. All of their skepticism, all of their hope that wasn't hope at all, just fear dressed up in parental worry. I watched my mother's shoulders round as if she'd been punched, and I hated myself for putting her there. But I couldn't see another way. 6 months later, I moved out. My father's hospital bills still stacked in pink envelopes on the kitchen counter, our rented duplex feeling smaller every day. I found a place in Koreatown, a studio apartment where the walls felt paper thin and tiles peeled away from the edges of the floor. The night I moved in, I played softly, worried about neighbors, bow trembling in my hand as I played Bach's Cello Suite No. 1. The city lights blinked out the window, red and gold and sickly blue. Work came in strange fits, background strings for a film score that never got released, wedding quartets at hotels that smelled like bleach and spilled champagne, teaching lessons to bored kids whose parents dropped them off and scrolled their phones, barely glancing up as I tried to awaken music in a child's eyes. Sometimes rent was a question mark. I worked in a copy shop 3 days a week, practicing scales behind the counter during quiet moments, bowing on air. I played in the subway sometimes, swallowing embarrassment as teenagers smeared, as coins clattered. Except once, a man stopped and watched a whole hour, and when he left, he pressed a 20 into my hand and said, "You made my day make sense." And I felt the first break in the wall of my doubt. For 3 years the city pressed on me, thick as smog, the skepticism in my own head joining the echo of my family's voices. I missed them. I wanted so badly to go home on Sunday nights, to eat arroz con pollo, to laugh like nothing had parted us. But every time I called, my mother just asked, "Are you eating? And do you need to borrow money?" and nothing else. Caleb went off to college in Arizona and sent one-liners. "You still doing that cello thing?" I stopped replying after a while. I nearly gave up in my 4th year. That winter, the city felt cruel. Cold seeps under your coat in LA in January, and the rain feels like an accusation. I was playing a gig for a modern dance company, rehearsing until midnight, and afterwards someone bumped me on the bus, hard, and my bow snapped right there on Fairfax. The tears burned down my cheeks, stupid and hot, and I thought, maybe they were right, and dreams are just what you do when you're too scared to face reality. But then Claire called. She was an old friend from the conservatory. She'd always been the one who believed, even when no one else did. "There's an audition," she said, voice quick, "for the LA Philharmonic. They're holding open seats." Her faith was almost enough to resurrect mine. I went, more out of habit and desperation than hope. The room was cold, the chairs hard, the panel at the front giving nothing away. I played Haydn, then Shostakovich, feeling every failure curling up inside my mouth. But something deeper, more earnest, bled through my bow. Maybe they heard it, the leftover ache from loss, the fierce thread of desire spun out between loneliness and hope. After the last note faded, I didn't exhale. I packed my cello, called a bus, and leaned my head against the plastic window, breathing in diesel and old rain. 3 weeks later, an email. "We would be honored to welcome you as our latest cellist." I sat on the floor, phone in my hand, mouth open, staring at the screen. I thought of my mother's hands, of Raoul's dismissive laugh, of Caleb's look of embarrassment when his friends asked about me. My next call was to my mother. She was making dinner, radio on in the kitchen, a jumble of pots and pans clanging. "I got in, LA Phil. I'm going to play Disney Hall, Mom." She went quiet, the way she did when she didn't know if something was true. I waited. There was a hush while she set down a pan, maybe wiped her hands on the old plaid towel. "I don't want you to get hurt," she whispered. "I'm not," I said, voice thick. "I made it." I heard her breathe, this reluctant, tentative, terrified hope she tried to bury under caution all my life. She said, finally, "Tell me when your concert is." The months blurred by. The orchestra was a beast of a thing, all glittering surfaces and sharp edges. But I clung to it, shaping my world around the practice rooms, the rehearsals, the first time I wore black tie, my bow tie askew and fingers trembling with nerves. The music filled what grief could not. The other musicians were kind, welcoming me into the odd family of brass jokes and string rivalries and late-night drinks after difficult Mahler rehearsals. I learned to walk across the luminous hardwood of Disney Hall's stage, to hear my voice among all the others. Hundreds of hours, so much sweat and patience beneath the shimmer of performance. Then the season's first family gala arrived. They called it Open Stage Night, family members invited, meant to be casual, a celebration of all the little victories along the way. I received my comp tickets, 5 of them in a waxy envelope, my name written in looping black marker. I called home again. "It's this Friday," I said. "I want you to come." My mother hesitated. She'd never been to a symphony in her life. Raoul said offhand, "Guess we'll see what all the fuss is about." Caleb asked if he could bring his girlfriend. And I almost laughed. Some part of him softened, enough to risk letting me be his brother in public again. They arrived early. I met them in the marble lobby, all shiny shoes and cautious glances. My mother wore her church dress, navy blue, and clutched her purse in both hands. Raoul wore a suit so old the seams seemed tired, but his eyes were bright behind it. Caleb looked around like he'd just landed from space. "Wow," he said, staring up at the shining ceiling. "Fancy." Nerves twisted inside me. The hall thundered with conversation, the low notes of wealthy patrons and committee members, the nervous energy of families seeing their children on stage for the first time. I guided them to their seats, front row, left balcony, close enough that they'd be able to see the movement of my bow. I wanted them to truly know what it was, this thing they'd mocked, this thing that had nearly broken me, but instead made me new. We waited backstage under fluorescent lights that hummed like anxious bees. Some of the brass section joked around. Claire grinned at me, squeezed my hand, whispered, "They're going to see you, properly see you." And suddenly I understood that I wanted that more than I'd ever wanted anything in my life. Backstage, I looked out and saw my mother's hands twisted together in her lap, Raoul sitting stiff as a board, Caleb leaning forward in his chair, already nudging his phone to take a picture. For once, he wanted proof to show off. They announced the first movement. The conductor signaled. The room hushed. I raised my bow, and for a second, all I could hear was the tick of anxiety in my ribs. Then I started. The opening notes soared, the cello rich and low and mournful, telling the story I hadn't found the words for, of standing in a hospital corridor and being told that dreams were too delicate to survive. I saw my mother's eyes go wide, brimming with something raw and bright, as the cello section joined in, the sound swelling to fill the vaulted ceiling. I let myself disappear into the music. I heard nothing, felt nothing, except for the tremble of possibility under my hands, until the piece finished and applause broke over us. It was thunderous, relentless.